Here's Mindy Audlin and Stacy Collins.
How do you know when your mission driven organization is actually successful? So, what are the benchmarks that provide feedback for you on your progress? I'm Mindy Audlin here with.
Stacy Collins.
Hi, Stacy. And in this episode of The Leading Edge, we look for the milestones that indicate, I don't know that your mission is ever accomplished, but your mission can be expressed. And so that's what we're looking at today is what are those milestones? What are those indicators that let you know that your mission is indeed being expressed?
Ooh, I love that. And I'll share my experience as the small group program leader here at Unity of Houston and how we measure some metrics and we measure success in our small groups program as part of the process of expressing our mission.
I love it. The mission expressed. So before we get into that, let's check in. So last week we talked about the big three. We talked about getting focused, and specifically we talked about those pillars of membership and participation and engagement. We talked about giving. We talked about serving. And we talked a lot about doing less by doing more, and it was pretty in your face. I don't know. It was real. It was a real conversation. So how did that go over with you? Did you take it back to your teams? Did you take it back to your leaders? Stacy, what have you been percolating on since our last gathering?
Just the idea, and I think because it is counterintuitive to so many of us, that we don't please people by offering them more things. Well, of course, that's one way we can try it. And then we end up burnt out and wondering why two people came to this thing and three to another, But in fact, it also serves people because we overwhelm them with choices when they come in and find our 25-page bulletin.
Right. Yeah. We think we're serving them, but actually it's kind of ironic that we're doing just the opposite. We're just overwhelming them. So I kind of had the same takeaway. And one of the things Reverend Michael Gott there at Unity of Houston, I heard this from him, although I know he read it somewhere else. I just don't remember his source. But one of the things that he has said with me, we've talked about this a lot, is the idea that clarity is kindness. And that when you're clear on what you want people to do and what you offer, and it's not just, this huge menu of, overwhelming options, that it is an act of kindness to be able to guide people like, here's your next step. And, maybe you have two options, maybe you give them three, but we don't need a 25-page menu of things to choose from. So yeah, I do believe that clarity is kindness. And I also think clarity is kindness because when you start with clarity, clarity allows you to simplify. And if I were to extrapolate on that idea of clarity is kindness, if clarity is kindness, then I would say simplicity is sustainability. Because it's when we start taking on too much and trying to please everybody that we just overload the ship, So what do we need to throw overboard so that we can be buoyant again and actually move somewhere and get this ship moving? So that's a great context, I think, for what we're talking about today. Today is, we've talked about being a mission-driven organization, a mission-centric organization. And, we started out this whole series talking about what does that mean and what is your mission? And I know a lot of organizations, we spend a lot of time and energy putting together a mission statement. And most of us, do a pretty good job of putting it out there in the bulletin and reciting it on Sunday mornings and that kind of thing. But how do we know if that mission is really being expressed? How do you know if you are being successful in bringing your mission to life? So that's really what today is about. And I share that context because we're going to talk about something that I know is everybody's favorite topic. Yes, get excited because we are talking about metrics and numbers. What are the numbers? What are the metrics that give you the feedback that lets you know if you are being successful in implementing the strategy that you've chosen to bring your mission to life? So you can see that why we do this as a series, right? We got the mission, and then you've got the strategy for implementing the mission, and then you have the metrics that tell you, was that successful? So that's where we are going in this episode. So take a breath. If the thought of talking about numbers and metrics for the next hour is having you go, oh, click, don't do it. Especially if that's you. If you find you've got some resistance, stick with this, because I promise you, this can be a transformational conversation. So what comes up for you, Stacy, when you think about the numbers?
Yes, numbers are our friends. Numbers are our friends.
Love them. More fuzzy numbers.
Yes, they're not the bearer of bad news or good. They're really, numbers don't lie. That's the thing about numbers, right? So they present a very, when you talk about clarity, they present a very clear picture. Now, how you interpret those and what you go from there, that's for you to do. But they really can be helpful in letting us know where especially when we're spending a lot of energy in a certain area and the numbers just aren't reflecting what our goal was. Maybe they're telling us to put energy in a different direction, or maybe something that we thought would just kind of, maybe take, and all of a sudden there's a lot of energy around it in big numbers. So they really help to tell us a story.
I love that. Yeah, they do. And I think that's why tracking your numbers is so important. And then having an accountability process where you review those numbers with your team can be incredibly empowering. It can be a point of clarity, and it can also help you, as last week we talked about, what are the things that it's time to let go of. Those numbers can help you make some really educated decisions. It makes me think of, in Unity, we have the 12 powers, and we talk about wisdom a lot. Like, we want to tap into our wisdom, and what are we called to do, and what is our intuition leading us into? But there's also that power of understanding. And I think, to me, the metrics and the numbers are a way to ground ourselves in a firm understanding of what's happening in our community, so that when we go into our wisdom, we go into that place of discernment, and we go to our intuition, we make decisions based on the information that is, like you said, it's not biased. It's the numbers just are what the numbers are. So before we even get into what to track and how to track and all that kind of thing, I think the important foundational conversation is, what is the hesitancy? And maybe you don't have any, but I guarantee you somebody on your team probably does when we start talking about numbers. And I'll share my experience. Number one thing, and so I want to just lay a foundation here. Number one thing that I find turns people off to talking about numbers is that knowing that we have, that the numbers, every number that we talk about is a human being. And so I know there is that tendency when we just talk about numbers to have it feel like that it's not about the human being anymore. So I just want to kind of set the tone that this conversation, we're going to talk about metrics, we're going to talk about numbers, but we're going to do that in a context of remembering that every number that you look at, every metric that you measure, is there because you care about the people that those numbers represent. So, just to sort of set the intent for this conversation, as we talk about numbers, this is not a get in your head and detach from the heart work that is ours to do. This is actually a very mature, sophisticated way to bring that heart work into the world in a way where it can expand and grow. We need our mind as well as our heart leading our organizations. So that's what I see. What do you see, Stacy, when you think about hesitation or going through the numbers? What's some of your experience when it comes to reviewing the metrics?
Yes, well, and I love what you said about even though we're talking about numbers, we know, in fact, we are talking about people. We're wanting to see how we can best be of service. And sometimes when we just put our heart and soul in some offering, and that we have just, planned every moment of it, and people have been excited, and then what do you know? It happened on the same day as the Super Bowl, or something happened. It was the most perfect, beautiful day here in Unity. I mean, here at Houston, if we get a day in the 70s, oh my goodness, people. So sometimes we equate the value of what we're offering with the numbers of people that show up. So, oh, this must be, and we have a little bit of attachment to seeing that thing be successful. And so instead, I think if we can just kind of gently disattach it just a little bit from the idea that the numbers are telling a story about the value of what you're offering. Maybe it's a different format. It maybe is not the content, just to look at that, maybe the timing, just to use them to help inform, not as a way of of placing the value on what you're offering.
Right. Yeah, I have found that, we would have these Sundays where like we would be growing, and then we'd have a Sunday and it'd be like, where is everybody?
Right.
And so afterwards, everyone would be like, what happened? What happened? What did we do? Like, was it the topic? Like, was it me? Was it you? Like, what was it? And we made a decision. We made a conscious decision that we weren't going to try to figure out why on any one specific number, that instead we were just going to look at the overarching trends. Because trying to figure out why this week was a good week and why that week there were fewer people, one is crazy making, and we don't know. We're just kind of, we don't know. And it's not useful. It's not a useful conversation. What is useful is looking at the trends and looking at, overall, we're growing, or overall we're not, or overall we haven't changed much in 5 years, like those are really good things to know. And I love what you said, Stacey, because I think it speaks to our tendency to put judgment on the numbers that's at an emotional level or at a personal level, versus allowing the numbers just to provide feedback. We teach cause and effect, right? So we're just measuring the effect so that we can, as needed, we can shift the way that we are being cause in our organizations. So yeah, so if you have any of that, the little voice in your head that doesn't like to look at, it's like, oh, I had this amazing event planned, but only so many people showed up. But if you beat yourself up for that, it isn't useful. It's not useful at all. If you look at it and say, okay, what did we do? Was it effective? What else could we do that might be more effective? And, test something out next time and see what's most effective. That's how the numbers can help us. But it's not useful for beating ourselves up. And I will share this too, as you look at sometimes like justifying, if you find yourself justifying, okay, nobody's showing up and we're not growing and we're in a decline and nobody's showing up, but you find yourself justifying it. Well, people don't go to church anymore these days, or well, it's summer and nobody comes in the summer, or well, if you find yourself trying to justify the numbers in an external way, like, oh, it's just people, it's just culture, it's just the times, I would look at that, because we are cause. That is our teaching, right? We have the ability to attract the outcomes that we seek. And, that's core to our teaching. So if you were to say, okay, here's what our numbers look like, here's what's happening, how can I be at cause? How can I create a shift? Then it's useful. And the same is true on the other side. If you are looking to others in New Thought or in any other denomination and seeing other people grow, but not giving them the credit for being cause, you know what I mean? And I've seen this happen in our movement with, they're growing because they use fear and gloom and threats, and they're growing because, and so we downgrade or we downplay why other people are successful and we aren't, rather than looking at other people's success and saying, what is it that they are doing that is an expression of principle that is creating this result? In fact, everything that we've been teaching in this series and everything that I created through Spirit Groups was all based on looking at other denominations of Christian ministries and seeing, okay, they are impacting lives. They are attracting people who are gung-ho, ready to serve the world, make a difference. What's the difference? What differences do I see in their consciousness that I could create a structure for in New Thought and then translate it for our teachings? So yeah. So any other thoughts on that? On just the whole, like, our relationship with numbers?
Yes, and I think during this time, this past year and a half now that we've been in pandemic too, that the numbers can show us really interesting things too. If we weren't paying attention at all, we might not realize some trends. I noticed one thing in our small groups that I've seen a huge trend towards people participating lunchtime to small groups, which didn't happen before when everybody was going to the office during the day and coming home. A lot of people, and now all of a sudden there's this space for that, and those seem to be very popular groups. So you just see trends in people's availability, and how people's lives are. The changes that are in their own lives are affecting the way they can attend church and be in community. So that's been an interesting one for me.
Well, and what I love most about that is it helps you connect more with the people that you serve. We talked about that last week, is how well do you know the people that you are serving, and those numbers and can help you spot some of those trends. Like their lives are different now than they were before. And so how do we pivot and adjust and set ourselves up to be of service to them? So that's awesome. Well, just to review, so this whole Leading Edge series is designed to help you create a mission-driven organization, to grow a mission-driven organization using obviously small groups, which Stacy is very proficient at, but also using just an overarching engagement strategy. So I'm going to review before we go into this next piece and in the how-to and what to, just to review what we call engagement strategy. Engagement strategy is, how do you grow a mission-driven organization starting from the point where there are people out there in the world that you could bless through your services, but they don't know about you? So starting there, like how do you reach out to them? How do you let them know you exist? How do you invite them in the door? Once they're in the door, what do you do to encourage them to come back? All those types of things are what we call engagement strategy. And we've been breaking it down into 5 different steps. They all start with the letter E, which makes it easy to remember. Easy to remember. So the first one, just as a review, is reaching out to those explorers. Explorers are the people who would resonate with your message, but they don't know you exist. So where are they? Who are they? And how do you invite them in the door? And then once they're in the door, we go into phase 2, which is engage them. And we talked in that episode about the importance of providing a way for people to give you your contact information so that you can follow up with them. And what is your follow-up strategy? Then once you've followed up, where do you invite them into next? And so the third E is expand. Where do they go to expand their understanding of your teachings, your message, your culture? That could be Sunday, that could be small groups, that could be a membership class. And we're kind of in that space now of going from that expand mode, that was the third step, into express. Step 4 is not just understanding the teachings, but expressing the teachings, not just knowing your mission, but living your mission. So there's this dance between expanding my awareness and then expressing those teachings. And we kind of dance between those, understanding something new and applying it, and understanding it and applying it. And then the final E, which we'll talk about next week in next week's episode, is encouraging. And that's where we get into scalability. But for today, we're really going to hone in on this 4th step, which is expressing the core ideas like we identified last week. Last week, we talked about the big 3. So we're going to talk about, once you've identified what are the most important things, what are the mission critical things to focus on, this week is about how do you track those things, and what do you track, and how often do you track them, and all that kind of fun stuff. So Stacy, let's kick things off with you, with your small groups, and what are some of the things that you track, and what are some of the things that you learn from the numbers that you collect?
Yes. So one of the things we do is we have several launches of small groups throughout the year, and for each one, we track how many groups we have. That's an easy one. And we use a software called Group Vitals. I highly recommend it. Really inexpensive, especially as you start your small group program and you start with those first few groups, because it will give you all kinds of metrics you never even knew you wanted, but you do.
Right.
But it will tell you things like that we track the number of groups, we track how many new people are in groups, our hosts, how many sessions have they hosted for? And that's really lovely for seeing who your leaders are and who will make good coaches for future new group leaders. And to, when you want to really acknowledge your hosts and, give them that extra love, you can see, oh, wow, so-and-so. I was just looking at somebody the other day and they've been hosting for 2 years straight, for each session. And that's just like, oh, so I can reach out to that host and just give them some kudos for that and an extra thank you. So we also see how many people that we don't even know that have never come to church. We don't have a visitor card on them, or we didn't even know they were out there, but they're out there finding our spirit groups or small groups. So we can find that too. So it's about who, and how long, basically are the two kinds of things, and just help us to see over time, not only how many people are we engaging, but how many people are we retaining, and they coming back for more, and just to see what those are like.
So I'm imagining that there are some out there thinking, okay, well, that's great for you. You've got a big staff and blah, 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 blah. And how on earth would I be able to track all of that? So what are some tips that you would have for someone who's thinking, I couldn't possibly track all that? How do you do it and have it be something that isn't just consuming all of your time?
Right. So, and I'm not a paid sponsor. I'm not paid to mention Group Vitals, but I just encourage you to find Group Vitals or something else. This is a particularly easy one. I want to say it's only a couple dollars per group. Maybe the first even 5 groups are free.
Yeah, the first group is free.
Right. Yeah. And so it does the tracking for us. It's a lazy person's tracking method, which I love. I can just export.
Smart person's tracking.
Okay, efficient. We'll go with efficient person's tracking.
You want to spend your time, creating Excel spreadsheets and doing all that, and you can have somebody else do it for you.
Exactly. And there's literally a dashboard for any kind of, like I said, any number you could possibly want. And it'll probably give you some ideas like, hey, I didn't realize that I should probably be tracking that, but that's a good thing to know. And so it does the number work for you and just gives you that picture that you need. So I would highly recommend Group Vitals or some type of software, or maybe your membership software, if you have one, does some things like that for you. But if you don't want to go that route, at least the number of groups, keep track of your hosts, and have your hosts take attendance and give that to you so that they're collaborating with you in keeping those numbers fresh.
Yeah. That's one of the things I love about Group Vitals, and I'm not, we're not affiliated with, we're not getting a kickback or anything, but I love Group Vitals. And I've used other things. I've used Fellowship One. I've used other membership software I've used it for groups, but I've used it for tracking membership and engagement. Group Vitals is my favorite when it comes to groups because it's so easy for the group leaders. And so that's, as we talk about getting into the numbers and tracking the numbers, what's fabulous about it, if you have each group leader just putting in like, here's who was at my group and check attendance, you don't have to do anything other than look at the report at the end of the month. It's all done for you. So if you've got that little gremlin in your mind saying, oh yeah, this is for them, but not for me, because I don't have that kind of time, use the technology that's out there. And Group Vitals, like I said, it's free for the first 5. And then, as you grow more and more groups, the price per group actually comes down as you get, the more groups you have, the less it is per group. But I think it's a great value for the information that it provides for you, and because it does allow you to delegate that tracking. So everyone's just tracking their group, and you get to compile all the data, which is awesome. So see, numbers can be fun. We can breathe through the numbers, and and what a great way to see the health of your program. So this is really the question today is, what do you track? And you probably track, I don't know, most people track attendance. I think we track attendance. You probably track your giving. You got to keep records on that anyway, right? So hopefully you're looking at your giving and things like that. So today we're going to be talking about what are the things that you track. Maybe there are some things that you aren't tracking that would be really helpful to help you make decisions about your ministry and what you're doing and what you might be wanting to let go of. Or maybe there's people saying, no, you can't let go of that. But when you look at the numbers tell a different story. And then I would also say, what's cool about numbers, if you know what your mission is and you know what are the key performance indicators, what are the things that let you know, not just that people are attending, but that people's lives are transforming. If your mission is to transform lives, then it really doesn't matter how many people are there. What matters are the people that are there having transformational experiences. And I heard one story from a minister of a very large megachurch who said they had a program, I think it was a program for millennials, very well attended. But in terms of their mission and what they were hoping to accomplish in people's lives, it wasn't having the impact that they wanted. So they canceled a hugely successful in terms of attendance, a huge successful in terms of giving, but it wasn't successful in terms of, it wasn't as successful as they wanted it to be for what mattered most to that ministry. So that's the conversation we're having is, it's not just about the numbers. It's about what those numbers represent as it relates to your mission. Are you on track to bring that mission to life? Is your mission truly being expressed beyond just having people there? Are those lives being transformed? What is going on in the hearts of the people that you serve? So that's what we're talking about. It makes numbers fun, doesn't it?
I'm having fun.
Yeah, super fun, super fun. So we got more coming up in just a moment. So thanks for tuning in to The Leading Edge. More in just a few minutes.